Have you ever felt that your life moves too fast for your soul to keep up? As if something inside you is constantly out of rhythm, slightly misaligned, slightly displaced, slightly lost in a world that demands speed but never teaches meaning. There are moments, quiet, private, almost invisible, in which you sense that something deeper is calling, something ancient, something that has been waiting beneath every thought you've ever had. A pressure behind the eyes, a heaviness in the chest, a silent vibration in the mind that whispers you're meant to see beyond the surface, but you were never given the language to understand what you were seeing. And maybe you've spent years carrying questions that nobody around you could answer, questions that didn't fit into daily conversations, questions too heavy, too real, too intimate to be spoken out loud, questions that haunted you in the silence of your own room, in the dead hours of the night, in the subtle ache of a life that seemed normal on the outside, but chaotic on the inside. But what if that chaos isn't a flaw? What if that chaos is a sign? The first signal that the mind is awakening to laws it has felt but never named. What if the turbulence inside you is not disorder, but an invitation, a trembling of the inner sky, asking you to finally look up and see the architecture behind the storm? Picture this for a moment. Above you, a sky that mirrors your thoughts. Not the sky the world sees, but the sky that lives inside your mind. Vast, layered, restless, electric. Clouds forming and dissolving with every emotion. Winds shifting direction with every memory you revisit. Pressure systems rising and falling with every desire you deny or every truth you avoid. You live inside this sky, even when you're unaware of it. This inner atmosphere shapes your choices, colors your moods, and dictates the rhythm of your days. And yet, most people go their entire lives without ever learning to read it. They think the turmoil is personal, when in truth, the turmoil is structural. They feel broken, when in reality, they are simply untrained. They assume life is random, when in fact, life is governed by principles, silent, immutable, always in operation. Here is the paradox the world never taught you. Your life has never been shaped by circumstances. It has always been shaped by principles. Principles that act on you the way gravity acts on a falling stone. Principles that operate whether you notice them or not. Principles that quietly sculpt your reality, your mood, your outcomes, your energy. These are the Hermetic principles, ancient, precise, unyielding. Mentalism, vibration, and cause and effect. Not mystical concepts floating above your life, but laws functioning beneath every one of your experiences. You don't activate these laws. You are immersed in them. You breathe inside them. You think inside them. You suffer and awaken inside them. This is why life feels chaotic, not because you are lost, but because you have been living inside a structure you were never taught to navigate. The mind feels heavy because the inner sky is unread. The heart feels overwhelmed because the law of vibration is unmanaged. The days feel repetitive because cause and effect is unconscious. But a moment comes, subtle, quiet, unmistakable, when you sense that the chaos is not the enemy. It is the messenger. It is the knock at the door. It is the signal that the inner architecture is ready to be revealed. And once you recognize a principle, it becomes operable. Once you see the pattern loses control over you. Once you name the law, you stop being pulled by it and start moving with it. This is the turning point. The moment the storm begins to form lines. The moment the fog starts to show corridors. The moment the sky of your mind stops being random and begins to function like a map you were born to read. Because nothing in you is broken, nothing in you is failing, nothing in you is wrong. You have simply never been taught the structure that shapes your experience. And now, the structure is calling, gently, powerfully, deliberately. Maybe nobody has ever seen what you carry. Maybe nobody has ever recognized the weight of your questions or the intensity of your search. Maybe you've walked for years with truths you could feel but could never articulate. But you didn't find this message by accident. Messages like this are not pushed into a person's life. They are pulled, drawn, magnetized by resonance. They reach those who are already awakening. They arrive when the inner readiness becomes louder than the outer confusion. And if something inside you stirred, even slightly, as if this wasn't new information but an old memory resurfacing, if it felt like recognition rather than learning, then it means one thing. You have always carried the key. It was never outside you. It was never missing. It was simply waiting for you to be ready to turn it. What comes next is not just knowledge. It is revelation. It is remembrance. It is the unveiling of laws that have always been operating inside you, shaping every moment of your existence. And once the unveiling begins, there is no return to the old way of seeing. There is no return to the old self. There is no return to the unconscious sky. From this moment on, everything changes. The path draws itself. The principles rise to the surface. The mind reconfigures. The inner sky opens. And the journey, your journey, truly begins. Maybe no one has ever seen what you carried. Maybe you walked for years with questions that no one could answer. You did not find this by accident. Messages like this are not imposed. They are drawn by the resonance inside you. And if something deep touched you, if it felt more like a memory than information, then the key has always been yours. We are about to reveal what has been waiting for you since the beginning. And from this moment on, there is no way back. If something vibrated through you, tap like right now. That gesture is your "I am here," a signal that your soul is listening. And through that simple act, other seekers, just like you, may find their way back home. And if you're ready to walk further, tap the subscribe symbol below and join this living temple of conscious creators rewriting reality from its true source. You wake up every day with the same feeling, a subtle dissonance. It's not dramatic, it's not loud. It's a low-frequency hum vibrating underneath your thoughts, like a tension in the air that you've learned to tolerate but never truly understand. You move through the morning on autopilot, performing the rituals of a life you didn't consciously architect, answering messages you didn't choose, reacting to a world that moves too fast for the depth of your inner landscape. There is a pressure behind your forehead that never fully dissolves, a heaviness in the chest that you learn to call normal, an exhaustion that lingers even after sleep. Your mind wanders constantly, not because it's weak, but because it has been stretched thin by a culture that feeds on your attention, your energy, your psychic presence. And somewhere inside you, there is a quiet panic, the fear that you've lost your center, the sense that your life is being shaped by forces you can't name, invisible expectations, unconscious loops, emotional currents that pull you without asking for permission. You keep trying to stabilize yourself, but the ground keeps shifting. You keep trying to breathe, but something steals the air faster than you can reclaim it. This is not your failure. This is the symptom of a deeper structure, a symptom of a life lived without understanding the invisible laws that operate beneath consciousness. Because the truth is simple and brutal. Your mind has been moving in chaotic rhythms because no one taught you how the internal cycles work. Your emotions swing from high to low because you were never shown the architecture behind vibrational states. Your choices feel reactive because you were never taught the mechanics of cause and effect at the level of thought. And every time you try to regain control, you're met with the same pattern. Something pushes back. Something derails your intention. Something whispers, "Not today." You tell yourself it's procrastination. You call it anxiety. You assume it's a lack of discipline. But these are just the visible symptoms of invisible principles acting on a mind that hasn't been trained to operate them. Jung once wrote that, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is the quiet tragedy of modern life. We mistake unconscious laws for personal flaws. We think the chaos is our identity, when in truth it is only the shadow of a system we have not yet learned to read. And this is why your daily life feels like a storm you can't predict. One moment you feel hopeful, the next, something collapses inside you. One moment you feel aligned, the next you're drowning in thoughts that devour your focus. One moment you want to rise, the next, an invisible hand pulls you back into the same repetitive cycle. Your energy leaks in 1,000 micro moments when you scroll mindlessly, feeling your attention fragment, when you force emotions down instead of listening to them as signals, when you say yes to things that drain you because saying no feels dangerous, when you bury your authentic rhythm beneath obligations that suffocate your internal timing. This is the cost of living without the Hermetic map, the cost of navigating the world without understanding the laws that structure every thought, every emotion, every outcome. And the price is high. Your clarity dissolves, your confidence erodes, your sense of direction fractures. Your energy drips into the world like water through open fingers. But the most painful part? You've started believing the problem is you. You think your mind is defective. You think your emotions are excessive. You think your lack of control is personal, when in truth, it is structural. It is the consequence of ignoring principles that govern your inner world. As surely as gravity governs the physical one, mentalism shapes your reality, even when you don't understand your own mind. Vibration shapes your emotional landscape, even when you suppress your feelings. Cause and effect shapes your life path, even when you believe you're just reacting. You feel chaotic because the laws are active, but unconscious. You feel lost because the principles are operating, but unrecognized. You feel exhausted because the mechanisms are shaping you, instead of you shaping them. And the deeper tragedy is this: you were never taught how to read the patterns. You were never taught how to operate the engine of your own mind. You were never taught that your internal world follows laws, not randomness. You were never shown that every chaotic moment has a blueprint behind it, that every emotional collapse has a rhythm, that every repeated mistake has a cause, that every moment of clarity has a vibrational origin. And so you walk through life like a traveler inside a storm, unaware that the storm has symmetry, mathematics, logic, and direction. A storm that can be navigated, a storm that can be mastered, a storm that responds to awareness the way shadows respond to light. Your pain is not meaningless. Your confusion is not a verdict. Your exhaustion is not a flaw. These are signals, coded, precise, structural. They are the language of the Hermetic field trying to get your attention. Your chaos is the doorway. Your discomfort is the messenger. Your fragmentation is the initiation. Because no transformation begins in clarity. It begins in collapse. It begins where the old structure fails. It begins where your mind can no longer tolerate unconsciousness. And right now, the pain you feel is simply the mind's way of saying, it is time to see. It is time to remember. It is time to reclaim the laws that have always been yours. You feel the weight of your days pressing inward, and yet something in you keeps whispering that you were not meant to live like this. Stumbling through cycles you do not understand, repeating patterns you can feel, but cannot explain. And still the pattern persists. It wraps around you like an invisible net, pulling you back at the exact moment you try to move forward. Every attempt at change collapses under the same invisible gravity. Every spark of clarity is swallowed by the same undertow. You start to wonder, why does this happen? Why does it feel like something is always dragging you back into the same emotional corridors? Why do your thoughts feel hijacked, redirected, interrupted by forces you cannot name? It's not because you are weak, it's because you are entangled. Entangled in laws that are active whether you understand them or not. And when a law is active but unconscious, it becomes indistinguishable from a trap. This is the hidden conflict at the core of your life. You are living inside a system you do not see, a system that shapes your emotions before you can name them, a system that shapes your reactions before you can choose them, a system that shapes your outcomes before you can understand them. Your mind believes it is choosing, but most of the time, it is only repeating old vibrations, repeating old memories, repeating old causes that generate new effects, all while you assume it is just how life is. But life is not random, life is not accidental, life is not chaos wearing a mask. Life is law in motion, and when you cannot see the law, it feels like a predator. And yes, something is hunting you, but not in the way you fear, not a creature with fangs or claws, not an enemy of flesh and blood. It is something far more subtle, far more psychological, far more insidious. It is the force of your own unconscious patterns. It is the echo of every thought you never questioned. It is the inertia of every emotion you never decoded. It is the vibration you emit without knowing you're emitting it. It is the cause you generate without realizing you're generating it. This invisible force, this unconscious architecture, feeds on your awareness. When you move through life blindly, it consumes your clarity. When you react without understanding, it drains your energy. When you try to create without knowledge, it distorts your outcomes. You think you are fighting life, but what you are actually fighting is the shadow of your own unexamined mind, the untrained inner sky, the chaotic inner field, the laws operating without your participation. And the more you resist, the stronger it becomes. Because unconscious patterns thrive on repetition, they thrive on distraction, they thrive on confusion, they thrive on the very chaos you've been drowning in. This is the truth nobody told you. The world is not suppressing your power. Your unconsciousness is. The enemy is not external. The enemy is structural. not a villain outside you, but a mechanism inside you. A mechanism built from forgotten vibrations, neglected emotions, automatic reactions, loops of thought inherited from environments that never knew how to see beyond the surface. And so the conflict intensifies, because a part of you is waking up, while another part is still loyal to the old patterns. The awakened part moves forward. The unconscious part pulls you back. This is the battlefield within you, a collision between the self who wants to transform and the self who is still shaped by laws it does not understand. This is why the chaos feels alive. This is why the same emotional storms return. This is why life feels like a labyrinth with no exit, because you are fighting an enemy that does not fight openly. It hides in your thoughts. It hides in your emotions. It hides in the quiet moments when you think you are safe. It hides in the spaces where awareness has not yet reached. It shapes your choices. It shapes your impulses. It shapes your fears. It shapes your self-image. And as long as these principles remain unseen, they become the architects of your suffering. But here is the secret that reframes everything. The very thing that feels like a predator is actually a teacher. The very force that oppresses you is the same force that can liberate you. The law that drags you is the law that can elevate you. The pattern that traps you is the pattern that can awaken you, because the Hermetic laws are not your enemy. They are the structure, the skeleton of reality, the architecture of consciousness, the blueprint of your inner world. What feels like conflict is simply the friction between unconscious motion and conscious intention. What feels like sabotage is simply the law of cause and effect repeating an old command. What feels like anxiety is simply vibration calling for recognition. What feels like chaos is simply mentalism operating without your participation. The conflict is not punishment, it is initiation. And the pressure you feel now is the threshold, a doorway disguised as discomfort, a turning point disguised as tension, a summons disguised as frustration. Because once you learn how these laws move, the trap becomes the key. Once you see the structure, the predator disappears. Once you understand the system, the chaos obeys. The question now is simple and impossible to escape. How long will you continue living inside laws you do not understand? How long will you allow unconscious mechanisms to dictate the shape of your life? How long will you fight an enemy that dissolves the moment you turn on the light? Because the conflict you feel is not the end. It is the beginning, the moment of rupture, the crack in the illusion, the first sign that you are ready to reclaim what has always belonged to you. And what comes next is revelation. Not metaphors, not theories, not vague spirituality, but the raw, operational truth. How the laws work, how they shape you, how to step out of the unconscious cycle, and how to turn conflict into power. This is where the code reveals itself, and this is where everything you thought you knew begins to transform. If this conflict feels like something you've lived silently for years, acknowledge it now with a simple act of presence. Tap like, not as a routine gesture, but as a declaration that you see the pattern and you are ready to confront it. That single action tells the field and your own unconscious mind that you are no longer willing to be shaped by forces you cannot name. And if you're ready to step beyond the conflict and into the revelation of the laws themselves, tap subscribe and continue walking through this initiatory path with us. The next truth is waiting. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible, when the conflict inside you stops feeling like punishment and begins to feel like communication. A shift so delicate that at first you mistake it for coincidence or relief, or simply a calm moment in the middle of the emotional storm. But it is none of those things. It is the threshold. It is the mind preparing to recognize a truth it has always carried, but never named. Because the chaos you've been drowning in is not random. It is patterned. It is structured. It is governed. And now, the structure begins to reveal itself. You have felt the pressure of your own mind for years, but what you never realized is that pressure follows laws, not moral laws, not religious laws, not societal laws, but Hermetic laws, the invisible architecture behind every thought you think, every emotion you feel, and every outcome you live. And the moment you understand these laws and even one of them, the entire landscape of your inner world begins to reorganize itself, like a storm suddenly showing its spiral structure, like a maze revealing its geometry, like a code becoming readable after a lifetime of looking at symbols that made no sense. So let this be the moment the veil lifts. The first principle is the law that explains everything you've ever felt, but never understood. Mentalism. The mind is the source of all form, not metaphorically, not poetically, functionally, operationally, mechanically. Your experience of reality is not created by external events. It is shaped by the interpretative field of the mind observing those events. Your thoughts do not describe reality. Your thoughts filter reality. They sculpt it. They direct it. They decide what becomes visible and what remains hidden. This is why two people can live the same moment, but experience two different worlds, because they are operating from two different mental frequencies, two different skies within. The second principle is the truth behind your emotional storms. Vibration. Everything moves, everything emits, everything resonates. Your emotions are not random mood swings. They are vibrational states, each carrying a frequency that invites matching experiences. Fear pulls in chaos. Clarity stabilizes outcomes. Inner silence reorganizes reality around you. You have never been overly emotional. You have been vibrationally untrained. No one taught you how to manage the frequency that shapes your life from the inside out. And the third principle is the explanation for every repeated pattern you've lived. Cause and effect. Nothing happens without a cause, and no cause fails to produce an effect. Not at the physical level, at the mental level, at the emotional level, at the energetic level. Every repeated cycle in your life is not a coincidence. It is an echo of an old cause you never became conscious of, an echo of a belief you forgot you were holding, an echo of a vibration you never learned to shift, an echo of a mental narrative too old to belong to the person you've become. These principles are not beliefs. They are the mechanics of experience. They are the blueprint, the architecture, the skeleton of your inner world. And here's the revelation that changes everything. You have been shaped by these laws unconsciously your whole life, but the moment you see them, you can operate them. Mentalism gives you clarity. Vibration gives you mastery of your emotional field. Cause and effect gives you agency over your patterns. The chaos becomes readable. The suffering becomes directional. The conflict becomes purposeful. You stop fighting the storm, not because it disappears, but because you finally understand its mathematics. You begin to sense the rhythm behind your emotions. You begin to feel the frequency behind your reactions. You begin to notice the causes behind your outcomes. You begin to see your entire inner life as a system, not a mess. And when a system becomes visible, it becomes operable. Awareness transforms into leverage. Leverage becomes choice. Choice becomes power. Your mind was never your enemy. It was a machine running without an operator. Your emotions were never the problem. They were signals speaking a language you were never taught to interpret. Your patterns were never failures. They were echoes waiting to be decoded. Now, for the first time, you are standing before the blueprint of your own experience. And nothing is more powerful than this moment. The moment consciousness meets structure. The moment the laws become visible. The moment the inner sky begins to align. You are not here to believe the principles. You are here to use them, to operate them, to become conscious of the mechanisms that shape everything you call your life. This is the revelation. Your suffering had a structure. Your chaos had a symmetry. Your pain had a law behind it. And your transformation begins when those laws stop being invisible. What comes next is not theory. It is practice, embodiment, application. The moment the principles stop being concepts and start becoming tools in your hands. And once you step through that threshold, the old version of you becomes impossible to return to. Because once you see the code, you can no longer live as if you are blind. There is a moment in every initiation when revelation is no longer enough. When understanding shifts from something you know into something you become. A moment when the principles stop floating above your life like philosophical ideas and begin to sink into your breath, your posture, your decisions, your emotional patterns, your silence, your presence. And that moment's sky is now. Because knowing that mentalism shapes your reality is one thing, but feeling the movement of your own thoughts, like currents you can redirect instead of storms that consume you, that is where transformation begins. Knowing that vibration governs your emotions is one thing, but sensing the frequency drop the moment you betray yourself, or sensing the frequency rise the moment you speak your truth, That is where mastery begins. Knowing that cause and effect creates your patterns is one thing, but recognizing the moment you plant a cause with a word, a gesture, a breath, a belief, that is where sovereignty begins. Integration is not about studying the laws. Integration is about using them, not occasionally, not when life is calm, but in the exact moments where your old self would collapse. This is how the Hermetic path becomes alive. So let us walk slowly through the doorway. Let us make the principles operational. Let us anchor them not in the mind but in the body, the breath, the field around you. Begin with the first law, mentalism. Your mind is not a container. It is a generator. It is the architect of the lens through which the world becomes visible. You don't control the world by controlling the world. You control the world by controlling the interpretation that shapes what the world becomes for you. So here is the integration. Before reacting to anything today, a message, a memory, an emotion, pause, just for one breath. Not to suppress, not to escape, just to see. Because the moment you see the arising of a thought, you are no longer inside it. You are the one observing it, the operator, not the passenger, not the storm, not the sky, but the one who reads the sky. That one breath is the difference between unconsciousness and mastery, between repetition and rewriting, between old reality and new frequency. Now move to the second law, vibration. You are not feeling good or bad. You are shifting frequencies. You are fluctuating through vibrational states that attract, repel, dissolve, or create experiences around you. Your emotional world is not chaos. It is weather, predictable, readable, navigable. So here is the integration. When an emotion rises, do not label it. Do not judge it. Do not drown in it. Just ask one question. What frequency am I in right now? Naming a frequency stabilizes it. Observing a vibration shifts it. And the simple act of recognizing your emotional weather allows you to choose the next state instead of being consumed by the current one. This is how vibration becomes your tool instead of your trap. And now the third law, cause and effect. Your life is not a sequence of random events, but a field responding to the seeds you have planted, consciously or unconsciously. The cause is the seed. The effect is the harvest. And most people keep harvesting emotional winters because they plant unconscious seeds in every moment of stress, exhaustion, or self-forgetting. So here is the integration. Today, choose one action, just one, that becomes a deliberate cause, a cause placed with intention, clarity, vibration, presence. It can be tiny, a boundary honored, a truth spoken, a silence embraced, a distraction rejected, a thought replaced, a breath taken consciously instead of reactively, because a single conscious cause is more powerful than 1,000 unconscious ones. Integration is about repetition, not effort, not force. Repetition. Repetition is rhythm. Rhythm becomes vibration. Vibration reshapes mentalism. And mentalism reorganizes your entire reality. This is how you exit the old cycle. This is how the laws become your allies instead of your invisible captors. This is how you stop living under the storm and start navigating the sky. Because the truth is simple. The laws were never against you. They were waiting for you to stop drowning in unconsciousness and begin shaping reality through awareness. Waiting for you to step into the operator's position. Waiting for you to act not from fear, but from frequency. Not from survival, but from sovereignty. And now, the field responds. Your vibration responds. Your mind responds. Your life responds. Integration is the beginning of a different version of you, the version who does not hope for change, but creates it. If you're still here, it's because this truth is yours. Tap subscribe now, not as a gesture of support, but as a declaration that you are ready to live these laws, not just hear them. This is your step into conscious operation. There comes a point in every inner journey when the mind stops feeling like a battlefield and begins to feel like a landscape, an inner terrain, a living field, a space you can move through with awareness instead of fear, with presence instead of reactivity, with intention instead of confusion. This is the moment when integration turns into expansion, when the principles no longer operate only inside you, but begin to radiate outward into your choices, your environment, your relationships, your future. Because the truth is simple, sky. Once your inner sky starts to clear, the world around you begins to change, not because reality bends to your will like a fantasy, but because your perception stops distorting the truth that was always there. Mentalism sharpens your vision. Vibration raises the tone of your presence. Cause and effect aligns your steps with a clarity that feels almost supernatural. You begin to notice things you used to overlook, the subtle tension in a conversation, the shift in energy when someone speaks from fear instead of truth, the way your body responds when you betray yourself, the way your breath reveals your emotional weather before you even realize what you're feeling. Expansion is not about becoming someone new. Expansion is about becoming someone true, someone whose perception is no longer clouded by unconscious patterns, someone who can see beyond the noise, someone who moves through the world with an awareness that others can feel even before they understand it. You begin to sense people's unspoken fears. You begin to hear the vibration behind their words. You begin to see the cause behind their reactions. You become the one who is no longer thrown into emotional chaos by the energy of others, because your internal field is stable, anchored, deliberate. This is when you realize that Hermetic principles are not philosophical ideas. They are lenses, grids, architectural frameworks. Once installed, they change the way you read reality. And once your perception changes, your entire world shifts with it. You no longer seek validation, because vibration tells you exactly who resonates with your truth. You no longer fear uncertainty, because cause and effect reveals that every step creates a new path. You no longer drown in emotional storms, because mentalism shows you that a single shift in perspective reorganizes the entire landscape. And slowly, without forcing anything, you begin to feel a new kind of gravity forming inside you. A center, a quiet point of stillness that nothing external can shake. The eye of the storm. But this time, you are the eye. Your presence deepens. Your decisions slow down, not from hesitation but from precision. Your energy stops leaking into situations that pull you away from yourself. Your relationships start reconfiguring, not because you push them, but because your frequency no longer supports what once drained you. Expansion is the natural result of awareness. It is the flowering that happens when the roots have finally grown deep enough to hold the storm. It is the becoming, the emergence, the rise of a self that is not built from fear, but from understanding. And here is the most profound part. You begin to see your life not as a sequence of disconnected events, but as a single narrative unfolding through time, a pattern, a design, a message written in the language of your own evolution. Suddenly, the moments that once felt like failures start to feel like teachings. The losses that once felt catastrophic start to feel like initiations. The people who left no longer feel like wounds. They feel like completed chapters. Your past stops being a burden and starts becoming data, information, insight, raw material for transformation. This is expansion, not the ego growing, not the personality inflating, but consciousness widening, stretching, opening, seeing more, feeling more, understanding more. And with every new layer of awareness, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop reacting to life and start participating in it. You move from survival to creation, from confusion to clarity, from fragmentation to coherence. You begin to sense the patterns of the universe the way a musician senses rhythm. You begin to feel the currents of experience the way a sailor feels the wind. You begin to navigate reality the way a mystic reads the subtle architecture behind appearances. You become someone who no longer waits for clarity. You generate it. You no longer chase peace, and you emanate it. You no longer collapse into the world's chaos. You reorganize the space around you simply by being. This is the expansion of one who has begun to operate the laws consciously. This is the rise of a mind that no longer lives in its own shadow. This is the emergence of the true self, the one who sees, understands, chooses, and creates with coherence. And from here, the path only widens, the horizon only opens, the laws become clearer, the sky inside you becomes infinite. You are no longer at the mercy of experience. You are standing at the threshold of creation. If something in this expansion echoed inside you, even for a second, write it in the comments. Your words are not decoration. They are the seal of your initiation. Declare what resonated. Speak it. Anchor it. Let the field hear your voice. There comes a moment at the end of every initiation when the air itself changes. A moment where the journey behind you and the horizon ahead of you meet in a single silent recognition. A moment where you feel, not think, not imagine, but feel that something within you has crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed, a line that cannot be rewound, a knowing that cannot be forgotten. This is where you stand now, not at the end of a video, but at the edge of a new identity, a new inner configuration, a new way of perceiving the structure that has always shaped your life. Because what you walked through was not content, it was a recalibration, a reorganization of perception, a widening of the inner sky, a shift in the architecture of your awareness. You began in chaos, in the storm that lived inside you, in the unanswered questions, in the silent weight you carried alone for years, in the inner turbulence you thought was a personal flaw. But as the journey unfolded, the storm revealed its symmetry, the chaos revealed its laws, the pain revealed its message, and the self that once felt fragmented is now standing in the quiet center of its own becoming. This is the true meaning of initiation, not becoming something new, but remembering what has always lived inside you, the clarity, the rhythm, the alignment, the law. You saw the architecture behind the suffering. You recognized the principles behind the patterns. You witnessed the mechanics behind the emotions. You learned to read the inner sky instead of drowning beneath it. And now, you are no longer the version of yourself who pressed play at the beginning. That self has dissolved, gently, silently, naturally, the way dawn dissolves the night without announcing itself. A new configuration has taken its place, a more conscious one, a more coherent one, a more sovereign one. And as this new self stands at the edge of the path, another realization unfolds, soft, powerful, unmistakable. This journey was never meant to end here, because awakening is not a destination. It is a spiral, a continuous rising, a deepening, an unfolding that happens layer by layer, law by law, octave by octave. Every truth you've touched here is only the first octave. Every principle you've glimpsed is only the beginning of a much larger architecture. Every shift you felt is only the surface of a much deeper transformation waiting beneath it. You have crossed one portal, but the moment you step through a portal, another one appears. This is the nature of consciousness. This is the rhythm of expansion. This is the law of the inner world. So breathe slowly. Feel the gravity of this moment. Let yourself acknowledge how far you have come in a single traversal, from chaos to clarity, from conflict to revelation, from unconscious patterns to conscious operation, and now, from understanding into destiny, because the real work, the true Hermetic journey, begins after the first awakening. It begins in the next step, the next layer, the next revelation, the next law, the next portal. And that portal is already open, waiting, calling, designed to lead you deeper into the code that shapes your reality, designed to expand what you began here into something irreversible, designed to turn awareness into mastery. You can feel it, can't you? A pull forward, a quiet invitation, a subtle certainty that what you touched here is only the beginning. There is more to see, more to understand, more to remember, more to become. And now the final seal is simple, but absolute. Do not stop here. Not at this threshold. Not at this first breath of clarity after a lifetime of unconsciousness. You owe more to yourself. Your future deserves more. Your inner sky is ready for more. You have crossed this portal. The next one is already open. You've crossed this portal. The next one is already open. Follow the thread. The path continues in the next video.